Hello and welcome back, everyone. Flavour Friday. Today we are going to be reading through Tinto Flavour number 31, which features the Aztec civilization for the upcoming game with the codename of Project Caesar. We have a little over 350 hours in the game, so we'll be giving our thoughts on some of the balance and some of the things we read through. As we read through, we haven't really gotten to take a close look at the Mesoamerican civilizations too much, so it's going to be exciting to read through this. I'm excited to see how their, stuff differs from the normal... Ooh, little UI update there. Hey, I like it. But we're excited to see what's different and how they differ from Europeans, if there's maybe something particularly substantive, this sort of thing. And so let's dive in. Getting into it, we do have, of course, the hidden message of Pavia, who's been sending this for some time. It is a smoke signal. Everyone knows Johan is stuck in a trunk somewhere. He hasn't given us... Johan has not written a Tinto Flavor or Tinto Talk for some time now. That's because they're keeping him in a trunk somewhere. Pavia has been trying to tell us where that is, because he is welcoming the Friday and happying the Wednesday. He wishes us a happy Wednesday, uncapitalized, which, that's a different thing. And then he welcomes the Friday on Friday. And this is a consistent pattern for several weeks now. And so we are looking into it. By looking into it, we mean we're covering the Aztec's flavor. But in which we take a look at the flavor content of Europa Universalis 5. Now, of course, everyone knows by now, this is just a placeholder name. This isn't the real name of the game, much like Project Caesar was not the real name of the game. Neither was Project Teaser, except for Project Teaser might be the real name of the game, but rather this is an anagram for what we suspect is going to be the real name of the game, which is Unveil Various Spear. It's a war game. War has spears in it. You unveil the spear, and then you shove it into your opponent, I suppose. And so Unveil Various Spear, definitely a reasonable name for a game. But, continuing on, today we will take a look at the flavor content for the Aztecs. Let's start without further ado. And this is perhaps another hint, because he actually has changed up his sentence. I think he universally starts out with, without further ado, something, and he has that at the start of the sentence, and now it's at the end of the sentence, which actually removes more ado, following the statement of further ado, which... we can respect the hustle, we can respect the game, but also it's probably a hint as to where they're keeping Johan, in a trunk. But let's get into the Tinto flavor here, because it's a flavor time. It's flavor time for Flavor Town, flavor for the flavor gods, just like we'll have human sacrifice for the blood gods, but we'll get into that. For the past 2 centuries, groups of Nahua people have descended from the Chichimec, apologies for all pronunciations to follow, migrated to central Mexico from their legendary ancestral home, known as Aztlan. Our people were one of those wandering groups. As with many Nahua nations, we settled Altepetl. It was named Tiochtitlan, and we built over an artificial island in the heart of Lake Texcoco. Man, it's really hard to read with these sunglasses on, but it's not about how well you can read, it's about how good you look. Our most prominent features were also influenced by the Toltec culture, and we started to develop a refined civilization in the lagoon. We would also come to be recognized as prime fighters by our neighbors, who we of course kidnapped, as equally refined warring skills made Aztec armies forced to be feared. However, we currently stand as vassals of the Altepetl of this name. Our expansion possibilities are limited to the proximities of the lagoon we inhabit. Only an intelligent leader could lead us on our journey to subdue the Valley of Mexico and beyond. Here we are, a county of Tenochtitlan. Oh man, I do not know how to pronounce these phonemes, man. But continuing on here, we do see a little bit of an update to the UI here, where we have, these are our unique country flavor things, and these are the number of events we have. So it looks like we'll have 16 events and 12 kind of unique flavor things, which is double or like half, roughly speaking, the amount we've seen for countries like France. At least in our first round of access, France had like 20 something. Ottomans have the biggest number that we've seen with 44, but that is excluding what you get from culture and religion. So France might be getting more from French culture and also Catholic religion, whereas Ottomans might not be. But we do see a little bit of an update to the UI in regards to that flag there. And so that's kind of cool. We see Count Tenok Mixcoatl, who does seem to be a relatively strapping lad, kind of around the 150 mark, so that seems pretty good, or well enough. As usual, please consider all UI, 2D, and 3D art work in progress. But what about the one-dimensional art? Which clearly we have to be one-dimensional peoples to enjoy the one-dimensional art. Before we can start, you may notice that we have reconfigured the country selection panel a bit. We did notice that. And now we have a new tab called Content, where we are grouping the unique features and content available to each country. Wow, that's fantastic. We totally noticed that. Very cool. So we do see that this is country bonuses. This is the flag here. And then we see Nahua. This is a religious kind of content. Nahua ritualism. Monarchy is also giving us some content, and settled country is giving us some content. So between all of these, we do see an aggregation. And so what we were saying about the Ottomans is the Ottomans have the biggest number for country bonuses that we have seen, but they might have less of these other 4 categories. And so it's not necessarily clear that there will be more content for the Ottomans, but we are suspecting it. Also, that was a version that was now at this point a little bit older. So very, very cool. We do see a little bit of the map here, which this is us, I think. Please take into consideration that the first screenshot is the most zoomed in map that we've ever shared with you in a very difficult area from geographic point of view. Therefore, please consider it as the usual work in progress stuff as our radar to make some improvements here and there to make it look better. I do think that this is the most zoomed in that they have shown on the terrain. I do think that some content creators showed the terrain zoomed in, but I'm not 100% sure. We didn't, because we were running the game on low settings, and so we didn't really want to show the terrain all that much, but we do see a couple of mountain ranges, and so this is maybe one, or as they say, one of the more challenging places as it relates to terrain. We also do see some of the terrain here of Mexico. There it is, us there, and we do see kind of the broader layout of the land. In particular, this region, while playing, we did notice really, really small locations just in general. And there's a ton of locations. The location density, per area on the map seems incredibly large in Mexico. The Nahua countries start with a unique government reform. The Altapedal that nudges towards expanding through subjects and also auto-slave raiding, which is also linked to the Nahua ritualism mechanic of sacrificing slaves, as we saw last Wednesday. On the Happy Wednesday, surely. We do see we have a reform that is slotted in, and that looks like a flavor reform, not a standard one. I don't know if any of these other look standard, but we do have unique names for the nobility, the clergy, the burghers, and the peasantry, all respectively. And we also kind of see that we have about 100,000 pops, which is relatively small. We have the Altapedal government reform here, which is a major reform, only one at a time, and disallows taking land in peace treaties. That is a fascinating one, but that's probably not as bad as it seems. Except for... No, that's not as bad as it seems. I know that looks like a really stern penalty, but if you can diplo-annex people, it's really not the worst. It just means you will have to annex kind of one of your really early subjects as quickly as possible to get a nice power base. And then once you have like a decent area around your capital with which to build, it's really not that bad if you can't get more territory in this way. Of course, it is just a downside, but it's really not... I think that this probably looks catastrophic just at first blush, but just like looking at it, it's like this is something we can play around, but yeah, it does seem bad. We get a Diplo capacity +1, raid enemies for slaves, yes. Yes, and then of course monthly progress towards centralization, which is pretty nice and also pretty useless. If you only have one location, then centralization, a lot of the benefits involve distance cost capital, or the biggest portion of the benefits, which only matter in states that are not your capital. So that's a little bit curious, but it will we will be able to slingshot to kind of maybe a better position using the centralization ticking. It's pretty nice. Overall, this reform seems bad, but it's not like cataclysmic or something like this, not apocalyptic or apocalyptico. Bad references here. There are a couple of privileges available to countries that practice the Nahua ritualism. Here we see Warrior Tribunal Clergy, plus 2% satisfaction. We do love that on the clergy. Clergy have a really nice bonus, and then plus 25% power, and we have a minus separatism. I actually don't know how strong this is at preventing revolutions or separatist movements. I think it actually is pretty strong. And monthly progress towards spiritualist. Overall, just pretty happy to get 2 satisfaction on the clergy, just generally speaking. We have the ceremonial tax exemptions. For the burghers, max tax for burgher estate, minus 10%, 5% happiness, plus 33% power, monthly doom, plus 0.03. This actually looks pretty bad. Max tax on burghers. Burghers and commoners, I think, are going to be your biggest sources of tax income, unless that gets reworked significantly. And so having minus max tax on them is going to be particularly bad. And so if you start with this slotted in, you're going to need to take a major stab hit to get rid of it. Also attached to Nahua Ritualism, a unique building that unlocks 2 unique units, the infamous, don't you mean famous, Jaguar and Eagle Warriors. Here we have the Warrior Temple, requires 1,000 soldiers, and we do see a little bit of the UI update we were kind of referring to. So this is the icon for a town. And this appears to be, or I'm assuming is a new icon for the city. Really do like the Pentagon replacing the diamond. Diamond was a little bit ambiguous, and I do like that you're getting more sides as you get bigger and bigger, assuming this is referring to city. I really do think that this is likely to be city, but I do like that kind of change. We also see it in the orange, or that's our glasses. Nope, that is orange, which is a little bit of a color update. I wonder if that is... I think that's actually super good. I really like that because, so for those of you who don't know color theory, if I'm not mistaken, which I often am, the foil, or I forget the name of it, across from each other on the color wheel is blue and orange. And so that means when you have blue and orange next to each other, they really pop. And so changing this to be orange really does make it pop in the UI here, because the blue is the background of the UI, and blue is the background on a lot of the UI. And so making objects more clear is... You can do this by having it be, as long as there's a high enough contrast so it doesn't become muddled, in which case it looks brown, you can make things really pop by having opposite colors, you know, on the color wheel when kind of doing your design. So yellow and purple, blue and orange, and red and green, unless of course you're red-green colorblind, which is probably a reason why you shouldn't do too much red and green, you know, in your games, in your video games. Red and green may be a problem. But okay, everyone does red and green for bonuses and malices, and I'm sure there's a colorblind mode that makes the green more blue. And this is, generally speaking, red-green differentiation is like the thing that colorblind people have, and they don't have difficulty distinguishing red from blue. So, continuing on here, clergy power plus 10%, monthly manpower plus 10. How much does the building cost? 50? I think that's pretty decent for... I think that's pretty decent rate. Can recruit regiments, can build Eagle and Jaguar warriors. I think that's a decent rate. We have the inputs as for construction, lumber, masonry, weaponry, and the maintenance in order to keep this going is going to be some weaponry. I don't know if that's a really good rate. This is something I maybe need to take a look at, just building efficiency in general. But seeing as we have this, I assume this is available in Age of Traditions. I think that is the Traditions icon. And so this does allow you some flexibility, because you don't necessarily need to go for the military buildings when you already have the Warrior Temple. Here we have the Jaguar Warrior and the Eagle Warrior. We don't have an explanation down below, which is unfortunate, regarding the differences between the two. We see one has minus strength damage taken. We see one has minus morale damage taken. That is a little bit of a difference. I'm not sure which is going to be better in that regard, and I think that is the only difference I'm seeing between the two of these. In their entirety, maintenance looks the same, every other stat looks the same. Yeah, I'm not sure. which one's better to have between the two of them, but in either case, they're both going to be better than base infantry. Really kind of hope that they have later age versions of themselves, but if they don't, it'll be, okay, an Age of Traditions unit. And a unique sumptuary law with 2 available policies. Here we will have warrior culture or tradition, our favorite. What if tradition is the warrior culture? Who knows? Warrior culture is going to give us a minus peasant to state satisfaction equilibrium. I don't like that. In particular, you tend to have a lot of peasants, and having minus satisfaction equilibrium also gives locations minus satisfaction. I do think peasant satisfaction is the second best to have behind clergy, but I think that is pretty close. But plus 5% discipline, probably worth it. Progress towards aristocracy, worth it just in the abstract, but is it worth it relative to the other option we have, which is tradition, peasant to state satisfaction equilibrium 2.5%, monthly progress towards free subjects. I think I'd be more inclined to go tradition, but continuing on. And a unique policy for the administrative system, proximity cost minus test 10%. That is a curious change here. Also, subject income plus 10%. I really want to dig in and take a look at how many of these subject income modifiers there are, because if there's a sufficiently large amount, you can get some funny and interesting things where you play uber tall with subjects because you just generate more income, unless you have just like 100 control in areas. But this proximity cost is an interesting one, because we have seen this modifier be called distance cost capital, and now it's called proximity cost. Proximity cost is more precise, I think, because your distance cost capital is, what is it? The modifier still affects things even if the proximity you're tracing isn't back to the capital, but is to a building that gives proximity, such as a bailiff. And so I do think that this is a more precise version. But I would be curious to see if this is replacing it or if proximity got reworked in some sort of way. Proximity works for control, but it doesn't work for market access. Market access operates on, or what we have observed is that it operates on a different axis. And so if perhaps proximity got reworked, that would be an interesting thing to see if that was affecting market access as well. Continuing on here you have some of the unique advances of the Aztecs. Warrior societies, which unlocks the Calmarcac building, and also unlocks the Pochicali building. We will see one of these buildings here, government building. That is, of course, what the purple banner means. We see that this does look like Age of Traditions. I don't know what this is. This just seems to be the icon over here. We do see, and it's even better, the town is, or the rural area is slightly smaller, then we have the town slightly bigger, and even bigger is the city. Seeing them all next to each other, I think that from the perspective of the UI, this actually is way more clear, and I'm really, really happy to see it. Also, I, again, do love the orange on the blue. I hope that they use orange in some more places to really make things pop, considering this blue is kind of a consistent through line in terms of the color. But if in the capital, the country benefits by, so this is capital only building as well. We do see the star, where it is a capital building. Max literacy of nobles plus 10%. If I recall correctly, the literacy of nobles isn't that good in terms of the bonus it gives you. I don't think this was one of the better ones. And we see efficiency of cabinet plus 5%, and also effects on the location, max literacy for noble. Wow, so in that location, plus 30% max literacy, but your overall noble literacy is going to be incredibly high if you just have one location, because you can only expand through subjects. So that is a bit interesting, and it's really, really cheap. Look at that, only 50 gold. A lot of the government capital buildings are 500 gold, so interesting to see that there. Here we see this other building that we don't know how to pronounce here, which gives army reinforcement costs minus 5%. That is curious. Strong discount modifier, we see it's plus 30, we see it's capital building, that's a decent chunk of manpower. So with just the capital and having this, plus the building we saw earlier that gives plus 10, plus sergeantry, I forget how much sergeantry gives, it might give plus 25, so that's 65. You actually will generate enormous amounts of manpower from just kind of buildings in the capital, so that's kind of neat that we do have access for something like that. We see Chinampas, which gives plus 10% food production, Age of Renaissance tech. It's okay. I think that this tech is probably strong-ish. It's probably worth researching the food production techs. I know some of the content creators are really, really bullish on food. I haven't gotten to take that close a look at it, so I don't really have a strong opinion on food. I think if food is strong, obviously getting plus 10% on food is going to be good. And we see another source of subject income plus 10%. So this is interesting. The Pix which is, if you get a lot of these stacked together, some funny things start to happen. I do think that there is a source in government reforms that everyone has access to, and I think there's a source in... Is it Age of... I think it's in terms of the text in Age of Renaissance. So that would be 40 plus 40% right there. Now, of course, they only contribute to you like 20% of their income if they're a vassal. But I think that this is a free money modifier. It doesn't take more money from them. I'm not really sure. But if you're, instead of getting, 20%, you're getting 28%. It makes it... It changes things up a little bit. It's still going to be the case that if you have high control in an area, you'd rather have it. But it does make it so that lower control areas aren't going to be worth it for you to have. And so maybe 30 control, instead of the breakpoint being like 29 control, where it's better to have a subject have it, maybe it becomes something like 35, 36 control, where it's better for a subject to have it. That's going a little bit deep in the tank for kind of an overview video like this, though. We see Reformed Telopachkali, which gives Army Tradition plus 0.05, Age of Reformation. I think that that's kind of okay. I don't have a strong idea of how good monthly Army Tradition is, to be honest. But okay. And we have the return of Quetzalcoatl, which gives the state satisfaction equilibrium 2.5%. Strong modifier, Age of Absolutism, kind of, solid for an Age of Absolutism tech, but the tech tends to get stronger as time goes on, which is why you'll see like 10% literacy in later age techs, but not as much in earlier age techs. Although most of the content related to the Aztecs is very attached to the Nahua religion or ritualism features, and is thus very mechanical, there are some non-generic, non-religious related DHEs available to them. We see the Great Pyramid. It has now been some years since our ancestors shook off the yoke of our former overlords, and instead expanded their influence throughout the neighboring city-states. Since then, the power of our people has grown significantly, and by now, our state controls key locations in the Valley of Mexico. The city-states under our rule still remember that we're all equals not so long ago, and it is uncertain how far we can trust their loyalties. I wonder if you can... It says you can't take territory. I wonder if you can only subjugate people or if you can vassal feed your subjects. It's kind of a little bit of a curious one. Things will be a lot better if you can vassal feed and a lot cleaner in terms of integrations and how you decide to do things. But okay. As it is every ruler's task to bring a new stage of the Great Pyramid of this city, we have an excellent opportunity to try the loyalty of our subjects. Any subject city that contributes to the project will be to what? Contribute what? Exactly. Money or sacrifices? We have the Great Temple, monthly doom, minus 0.01. This seems okay. Effects on the location, plus 20% clergy power. Just in the location, but if you only have the capital city, this is going to represent a relatively large thing. We see cultural tradition, plus 0.1. I think influence is generally stronger than tradition, because influence is your offense, and I don't think you need to play cultural defense too much, but I don't really know that well. Pop conversion speed, plus 10. Oh, I wish I knew the base rate. Like, the base rate of culture conversion is really, really slow. So I think that this would be really good if it was like culture conversion, but, okay. This is 200 gold, so that's kind of more normal for a capital building. But this isn't a capital building. There's no star here. Interesting. So we just spam this all over the place? I don't know. I mean, we could get a bunch of negative doom. Maybe it's worth it for the doom. We see Tla Kael Apacano, the foremost architect of the city or of the Triple Alliance, and the first person to be named its prime minister, is an indispensable force within our state. Having served a number of different rulers, he is now involved in the running of almost every part of our state. He is one who organizes our military campaigns. He handles our finances, and when our army is in the field, he acts or when our ruler is in the field, he acts in his stead. However, above all, he is a great champion for the worship of this god, who has a number of measures to ensure that our deity and the martial traditions that surround him is given proper respect. Here we see the Pantli of Tenochtitlan. I used to know how to pronounce this, and I don't know how to pronounce it anymore. Victories against our foes come at a steep price. For years we have fought to preserve our domains and ensure our people expand and prosper. The gods have been kind to us, providing ample warriors of flesh sacrifices, our favorite, while protecting our fighters. As a result, we have come to erect a great banner of skulls, also known as taken from our enemies and those who sought to curb our expansion. It's like the Iron Throne, but with skulls instead. Way more metal, except it's not as metal as iron. The heads now adorn the skull banner, a reminder of those on the warpath against us, a grim reality awaiting those who oppose us, of course. And, well, a final boss to deal with, Kokolizli? A strange new fever. No, not the white devil. A strange new fever has begun to spread in our lands. It is far worse than any disease we have seen, either before or after the arrival of the Europeans. Oh, wait, after the arrival of the Europeans? What's this? The fever and the bleeding that comes along with it leads to death in just a few days. Its rapid spread amongst the people have led to widespread panic in our society. The superstitious among us have foretold the displeasure and wrath of the gods. Oh no. Is there a way for you to unify everything? Or a mechanic that allows you to annex subjects? I wonder. But this is going to be super neat, like expanding via subjects and this type of thing. I already think expanding via subjects is really strong, so the fact that you can't take land directly is probably not too big a deal. It'll just hurt in the first, 20 or 40 years or something like this. And much more. But that's all for today. Next week, we'll have a Tinto Maps feedback on Monday, a Tinto Talks on Wednesday, and a Tinto Flavor on Friday. Are you going to tell us which one? Tinto Maps for Indonesia. Excited to see how things have shaken up. Indonesia, in theory, should have a lot of spices, so that should be pretty nice. And that's actually maybe a sleeper region in terms of overall power level, because RGO quality is actually seems incredibly important for power level. RGOs really drive a whole lot of things, and I do think that they are kind of extremely strong. Population's also really strong. I don't know how much population Indonesia has, but very curious to see what this looks like. This is why Korea is so strong. For example, they have a ton of pops and absolutely insane resources. Wednesday, Tinto talks about the Inti and folk religions. I do believe this is the last of the religions to be covered, and so after this, it's unclear what they will be doing Tinto talks about. And then Friday, or Friday, the Flavor Friday, we will have a Tinto Flavor about the Inca. A little bit interesting. Not something in Indonesia. That's a little bit curious. Although we had it for Malapascit already, and if I recall correctly, having looked through the flavor in some of the areas, I don't think there was a whole lot for Indonesia in general, other than Malapascit, which had a ton of flavor, and so maybe this makes sense, and we'll see it in the Inca. So that's kind of cool. And also remember, you can wishlist Europa Universalis 5 now, which of course you could do, and people will like if you do it, or the devs will like it. But that's all for today. We kind of cruised through here. Very interesting, the can only expand through subjects mechanic. Here we see just a ton of crown power. That's because we're probably on one state. This is relative to a lot of what we've seen actually so far. This is, I think, the highest crown power in any of these we've seen so far, which we're assuming they're just showing us the profile at the start of the game, 40%. And this is because you have 100 average control when you only have one location. And control gives for every control you have under 100, it gives you -1% 1% crown power. And so it dilutes down your crown power a lot. And so by virtue of having only one state, you have an enormous amount of crown power. So this is kind of an interesting one. It's also interesting and relevant for countries like Venice because the proportion of trade income that you get, rather than it being distributed to the estates, is based on your crown power. So if you really, really want to generate most of your income through trade, having high crown power and having limited locations is maybe the way to go. And so it is a bit interesting to see such a high crown power in here, where in a lot of other places we see like around 10%, which is really bad. You want to be over 25, and that's not a problem here. Of course, you can still put in a bunch of estates, though, and then it'll get dragged down quite a bit. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. You know, do the YouTube algorithm thing. And other than that, tell me the most flavorful thing you ate this week, because it's Flavor Friday.